But I told the stories years ago. I remember at Esperanza on Christmas Eve, or they would make tamales. And each person would bring their own fillings from there, whether it's Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Mexico, wherever you came from, you bring the fillings. Well, they got in there and they started to make the masa, which you think is just like, that's just the masa. That's like the
and
wrapper.
The church divided 8 ways.
Yeah, no, that's idea the wrapper. Did I screw that up?
And you can get Listen Up for only $14.
Man, I'm glad that you're here. Cesar, I want you to talk. You serve a church in our conference.
That's right.
But what I'm really interested in hearing about, you also are working with Hispanic ministries in the Texas Conference. So tell us a little bit about where you're serving, kind of just about yourself and where you're serving at the church that you're at now.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, you know what? I'm really glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation. And I actually watched a lot of your episodes, actually, and so I feel like a little bit of a fan kind of coming to the table here. So a little bit about myself. Well, I didn't grow up in the church. I came to Christ as an adult at about 25 years old, and it was like kind of this arc for me, right? God's prevenient grace just tugging at my heart until like I could deny it no more. And so I actually came to the Lord, and then just a few years later got married, and next thing I know, I'm at Foundry United Methodist Church out in Jersey Village, and I'm attending church there, and we actually got plugged into the Spanish service there. My wife is from Guatemala. She was born and raised there, and so, English is her second language, while I came from El Salvador when I was 6. So I grew up here, in Spring Branch, actually, off of this mean streets of Long Point, and which I see things are changing, but
not much,
when
not a Long Point.
Back when I was there, and so I was actually, so English became kind of my second first language in a way, and so we started going to the Spanish service there, and next thing you know, I'm on board, and I'm on staff, and I start this journey into becoming clergy in the United Methodist Church, and so that took me. I was there for 5 years. Then I was appointed at CrossRoads United Methodist, which is the church that I'm serving now. 2 years into a merger between Cokesbury UMC and Christway UMC, and Cokesbury was English-speaking congregation, Anglo, aging, and Christway was this predominantly Spanish-speaking congregation that came out of Friendswood United Methodist and was looking for a place. They decided to kind of come together, and next thing you know, they merged. I come in 2 years into the merger. Not recommended, I would say. It was difficult, but I'm still there. The church is still there, and we have this really multi-congregation, I would say, right? Multilingual, multigenerational, multiracial, multi-ethnic, multiverse. You name it, it's multi, right?
It's whatever,
Multi-grain.
Yeah, seriously, we have everything there, I'll say my oldest is 94 this year. My youngest was born 3 weeks ago, or maybe 4 at this point. 3.5 weeks ago, or something like that. And so we've got this thing going on there, and we've got a lot of exciting stuff happening at CrossRoads. I think
where in Houston is it located?
So CrossRoads is nestled in Sagemont between 2 mega churches, Grace and Sagemont, right? And so we're this little community church, right? This little neighborhood church right there off of Scarsdale. And it's really interesting. I mean, it is a bit of a crossroads because half a mile down, you're in Pearland. Half a mile south, you're in Friendswood. Half a mile north, you're in Pasadena. Half a mile, more than maybe like a mile and a half, you're like Clear Lake, basically, And we're Houston unincorporated. So you have like this convergence of all these. We're like at the edge
People
of
who don't know
everybody.
anything about Houston, their minds just going
They're
like,
just
I
like,
don't know when we're
Houston
Yeah,
unincorporated.
seriously.
What
How
is
can
that?
you be that close to that many places?
Yeah, and be off the grid.
And that's how it is, you know. That's how it is down there. And so which gives us like this access to different communities, and itself being a community that's calling itself South Belt now, Sagemont South Belt, like this whole South area, and just a lot of stuff happening there. But you have everything, you know. Like I have the gamut of income, right? Like close to 45, you have, you know, really low income, high poverty, and then you go into Pearland and like there's mansions, you know, and so you have kind of everything around in that radius. So it's really interesting to do ministry there.
So your church it merged. I've been a part of a merger. Those that are not highly recommended.
No, they're hard,
and,
right?
And in the early 2000s, I merged two churches that were very similar as far as homogeneous in a way, you know, similar ages, similar socioeconomic race, and all that kind of stuff. So that would be actually a lot easier than what is the church? I mean, how do they come together as different like ethnic groups and languages? And
Brother,
how's
it's
that
by
work?
the power of the Holy Spirit, man. You know?
I kind of set that one up, didn't I?
I mean, there's like where I could say like really it's by the power of the Holy Spirit, because it is. I mean, it is easier to be amongst people that are like you. It is easier to work with people that are more like you, think like you, are in the same kind of areas as you. And yet, you know, we have this church and people come together. You know, our board is very, very diverse. It's mixed. You know, you have a lot of ESL folks in there. You have people who are older, people who are younger, people who are, you know, more affluent, and people who are poor. You know, like we have this real mix within our leadership, but our church is like that, right? And so people come together. We have different services, but everything else we almost do bilingual. We come together as much as we can. We eat together. We do events together. We do a lot of stuff together, and we are all Crossroads, right? And everybody, you ask anybody in the church, they say, well, we're Crossroads. And that means that, and I always tell the church this, like we do this not because it's easy. We do it because it's hard. And we're Crossroads because it's difficult.
Unity is hard.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure is.
homogeneity, you know, but the big church growth movement, right, was all built around moving into the suburbs, and
Yes.
it was homogeneous. It's like everybody's the same socioeconomic, the same race, same language, same interests, same ball teams, same schools, and that was the formula to like for fast growth.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked
It
to some
worked.
extent. But in the changing landscape of a city like
did it?
Houston, well. You
No,
can say they are remnants that still exist, and if you look like when you look at what happened in United Methodist Church, and you look at some of the disaffiliations within Houston proper, very few churches disaffiliate. And my hypothesis on that is churches in Houston, even if they are predominantly, say, white congregation like Chapelwood's main campus or St. Luke, they have to live every day within a multi-ethnic, multicultural, multi-political, wherever you are, differing partisan, political, everything, right? You rub up
learning that
against that
all the time.
every day.
Yeah.
So you understand what it means. Like, okay, we don't all see eye to eye. You start going farther and farther away from the city, and you get into some of these suburbs. You saw some of these churches. It was easy for them to disaffiliate, but you also walk in, and it's like, not only does the church look alike, the whole neighborhood looks alike, the whole suburb looks alike,
The whole zip code. Yep.
the whole zip code looks alike. We're not going to name any names, but I mean, we could easily do that if you look. And I think that's happening where you see more disaffiliations happen either out in the rural areas and where that's the case. But when you are in a place of diversity, you know, it's harder, but man, it's rich.
It really is, and I would also say that you know, we've got some folks coming up over there, but they're all from my church, so they didn't know I was
Oh.
going to be on here.
Well, good, they can come in.
But you know, kind of bridging the gap with the conference, you know, we're living in a place where I'll say that the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, their tagline is leaders of the new majority. You know, a place where, you know, it's so diverse. There's so many people. There's so many different ways of thinking, of living, different cultures, different ethnicities. And we need to look at things so much more different, you know, than we have in the past. We need to learn how to expand our culture within the church, right? Because every church, and the United Methodist Church as a whole, has a culture, right? Yeah. How that culture rubs up against other cultures really determines how open it will be to them, you know? And unless we're willing to look at the mirror and say, this is who we are, this is what we're about, this is what our church was built for. It was built to attract a certain demographic. It was built to attract a certain group of people. It was in a certain neighborhood. And we look at a mirror and say, this is who we are, this is who we're built to be. But now look at what is around us and say, well, how do we include them all? Because every neighborhood, you know, from the most affluent to the poorest, is going to have some sort of diversity now. You know, I was talking to some churches. I mean, Hispanic people, right? You know, they're everywhere now, right? They're not this niche group of people that we're trying to reach, right? They're not this demographic that we're trying to reach. They have permeated throughout every area in life, right? In the communities. They've integrated, right? Because this is what we do. This is what we did, right? I'm an immigrant. I came here to the United States from El Salvador, right? As a child, I grew up here, and I'm bicultural in that way now. But by and large, Hispanic people you find them everywhere, right? And a lot of times we don't see it. Churches don't see it. They don't know, right? And they'll say, well, how do you know we have this? We have a Hispanic population. I was like, I bet you in your neighborhood, you'll find them, right? Yeah. And I'll bet you too, if you have a restaurant right there, they're there as well, right? If you go to schools, they're going to be there, right? If you go to the college, the junior college or whatever is around you, they're there, right? Everyone has figured out that they're there except the church.
So this is segues from the church you're serving at CrossRoads to the thing that's always befuddled me. It's a great word.
It is a great word.
When I came to the Texas conference, I thought, from South Georgia conference, right? I thought, man, there's going to be Hispanic Latino churches everywhere. And they're going to be huge. I'll bet they have and I got here. They're
just called Catholics.
Well, or Pentecostal.
Pentecostal.
Yeah, but there are a lot of United Methodist churches or any Methodist church, all right? And there just wasn't. Now we've, at Chapelwood, for years and years and years, tried to do Hispanic ministry. Now we've got one that's actually really doing well in Spring Branch, that's been growing, but we do it a little different. We do it a little bit more, it's a little more Pentecostal flavor, right, of a church. And I just wonder, as you're thinking about Hispanic Latino ministry in a place like Texas, in a place like Houston, I mean, what do you see that we need to be doing, or how does the church need to be moving, or just whatever is on your mind as you're thinking about the landscape of how we could do better to reach the people that are around us. And when I say the people, it's a hard thing because we're all the same people now. We're not so different anymore. We're all like this smelting pot of Houston is a very unique landscape. Yeah. So I don't even know if is the strategy just to go like our Hispanic congregation is Spanish speaking, right? And before we tried bilingual services, we're toying around our Hispanic pastors like, I'd like to do an English speaking service. And people are like, well, wait a minute, you're the Spanish speaking. It's talk. I'm confused. The more I talk, the more I confuse myself.
No, I think, so here's kind of where we look in the mirror and we accept some realities, right? Other folks have figured it out but us, right? Because there's huge Hispanic congregations. Right? Yeah. And in fact, a lot of Spanish-speaking congregations, they're kind of on the other side saying, like, do we have English service now? Because the majority of the people that they need to reach speak English. Because the second, third, and fourth generations are the vast majority of Hispanic people in this country.
Yes.
Right? And so, one, our understanding of what it means to be Hispanic and what Hispanic ministries needs to expand.
Yes.
Right? To not just be niche.
Yeah.
Not just to be Spanish only, right? And not just to be for the less fortunate, right? For those who are poorer, right? Because then that gives us this kind of idea of we need to do for, right?
That's right.
We need
That's
to
right.
we need to do this for
That's
them,
right,
or we need to
Cesar.
do this, right? And then we need to have some sort of pantry, or we need to fill their needs. And then that makes us no different from any government agency that does the same thing, right? Like we're just the same to people, right? We're just in a church building. And so we're not there to lead them spiritually, walk with them. We're not there to accompany them. We're not there to receive them. We're not there to love them. We're just there to do for people, right? And so that's been kind of our idea of doing evangelistic missional work within the Hispanic community, right, for a long time, right? And so that's what we know, that's what we do. So we need to go beyond that, right, to a kind of a more holistic approach of what it means to be Hispanic, right, here in Houston and in Texas. What it means, how do we reach people, right? How do we walk alongside people? How do we lead them spiritually? Because that's what they're looking to us for, and we're not doing that, right? We're not doing that. Right?
Yeah.
We're not saying, hey, I want to lead you, right? I want to pastor you, right? I want to weep with you and laugh with you, right? We're not saying that to people. We're just saying, like, come, I got food for you. Or come, there's these programs for you. Come, right? And so we need to kind of go away from that and be more relational and establish deep-rooted relationships with communities, right, with people, because that's what works.
I will say, I think what Joseph Rios has done at Chapelwood and with Generaciones has been through, our history was very much like you're saying. I think for a long time it was Chapelwood going into the community saying, we'll set this up, and we kind of even said to ourselves, they'll never be able to support themselves. And when Joseph came from a very different faith tradition in the Pentecostal church, he's got people tithing.
Yeah.
The people love they know that they're Chapelwood. They love Chapelwood. They love Generaciones.
Yeah.
He's with them. They eat together. They dance together. They
economically
sing
diverse.
together. It's a very economically diverse congregation. And so I think, I really would like for Joseph to start helping us all to kind of think about this, because I think you're right. I think that's one of the few places I've seen where it's done that, because we didn't do that model for a long time, but it never worked.
Yeah.
Never-
We expect little from them, right? Oh, they're not going to be sustainable. Why? Because they're poor, right? So it's our attitudes and our mindsets that need to change about this, right? Because this is a flourishing community, right? They are doing great things, and they can bring great things, right? And great gifts to the church. Now, I will say this, right? It's highly entrepreneurial, right? Highly entrepreneurial. And that's why it has a hard time fitting within
Our system,
our systems.
because we're not
Right?
very entrepreneurial.
Because we want to know what's going to happen when, and they're going to get
3
an
weeks
idea
from
and
now,
say
8 weeks from
they're going
now.
to get an idea and say, like, we could do this weekend, right? And
We-
let's just
we
go
deal
out
with-
and do this
we deal with
because we
this.
got to get this done
And 'cause it's-
because the
yeah.
Holy Spirit is leading us to do this, right? And what we want to say is like, yeah, but could you do that in 6 months, right?
Yeah, you didn't fill out the right forms. To
Yes,
do-
can you bring in,
You didn't put it
the
in
expense
EMS.
report, right? Can you send an email, right?
Yeah.
And so they're wanting to go be embodied, right? In their community. They want to be with people. They want to do things, right? They want to minister to families, right? Really reach the needs of people. And yet we want that to be scheduled out, right? And we want to control the access to the building. And we want to control what is
Have you
happening,
been
how
talking
it's
with
done.
Joseph?
No. I just know this is how it
I
goes,
just- because
right?
this is just so.
He knows white people.
He knows why.
He knows white culture.
You know,
John.
I've done only Hispanic ministry. I've done now CrossRoads, which is a real hybrid of things,
Yeah.
right? So I get this, right?
Yeah, you do.
It's difficult to navigate this system, right? It's difficult to navigate any structured system when you really need to open the gates
Yeah.
and say, go. right?
Yeah,
Here are some guidelines. There's guidelines that need to happen, right? There's some things,
Sure.
but when you give permission to go and do, you will be amazed at what can happen and what can be done.
This is why I think that
Oh, can I? One
Yeah.
last thought. Why we don't have huge Hispanic congregations in the Texas Annual Conference is partially that our system.
No, you're right.
stifles that.
We're kind of a living testimony of this at Chapelwood, and we've had to really scale back on what are the red lines to cross, because there used to be like a lot of them everywhere, and we've had to. And I think Joseph would even say there's still too many bureaucratic.
you've got 2 left,
limits.
and there's still too many. And
Well, there's a balance there, right?
Yeah.
But they're also
Absolutely.
getting 300 in worship each
But
week.
what I was going to say, though, is I think the core of that is relationship. You can give away, you can have high grace and high trust if there's relationship. And I think the thing that we're understanding, at least the way that within Chapel is happening, and I think can be a model, is that once you have relationship of trust, then it's like a parent or a sibling or a brother or a friend that you trust, that they're going to go do things out of like, because you trust their heart, you trust the ministry that's going to happen. If it's out of a system, then the system has to build checks and balances and doesn't engender trust. And I think what I hear you saying is that we have to build systems of trust. That means it has to be highly relational.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And once there's relationship, you can go.
And this is how we also include the greater Hispanic community into our worshiping spaces as well, right? By building high trust relationships
Yes.
and systems, right? Because
Yes.
people will come if, for example, you've sat at their table before,
Yes.
right?
If you know their name.
If you've allowed them to, because a lot of times our mentality is we want to serve them, right? But that's in a way that gives us power,
Power play.
right? But when you allow people to serve you and you humble yourself to sit at their table, to eat a meal that they have made for you, right? And we be good guests. You'd be amazed at what that can do, right, in relationship. Then they'll seek you out and say, hey, come be a part of this. Hey, come help out with this. Or, hey, do you want to come? Do you want to? Because the dynamic of the relationship is not like, hey, now this is the church I get stuff from, right? Like, no, this is the church that is really a part of my community, right? This is a church that's present here. This is a church that could be my church.
Yes.
Right? This is a church I could go to. So
Yeah,
it's a different
the lay
mentality.
leadership, the volunteerism at Generaciones, them serving at the food pantry, them having a sense of ownership over the campus, although there's still a lot of those boundaries and things because of the structure and all that kind of stuff is fascinating to me. That's what I kind of see is there's going to have to be a different way of thinking about doing it if we want to do it successfully and reach as many people for Christ as we can.
Do you think that this hit me? Do you think that issue is not just about Hispanic ministry, but it really is about the end of the road that a type of system has created that no longer works in the world? That maybe it's being played out in this kind of the juxtaposition between high relational and high system. That high system is played out. It doesn't work. It doesn't create good disciples.
I think you could argue this with church planting,
Yes.
even in Anglo church planting
Yes.
now. Like Melissa said, earlier in the 90s, you had a playbook. If you try to parachute drop now, we've had some new churches start from some disaffiliations. That was kind of like a congregation moving to a new place.
Right.
It's a church plant, but
Only technically.
technically, yeah. But when's the last time we did a drop? We don't really do those anymore. They're expensive. They don't always work out. So our system, I don't know that it's real entrepreneurial. I think churches are entrepreneurial, can be.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that whole churches planting churches is kind of better than a conference planting.
Right.
I don't know.
Yes.
I could be wrong, but
I tend to agree, right? So my goal is not that I want to first plant churches, but we need to create spaces where these things can flourish, right?
Yes.
These relationships can flourish. So it's not about me saying, say Chapelwood, hey Chapelwood, I think that you are in this like 80% Hispanic community, it makes sense for us to invest some money here and get something here. Because if the DNA of the church, the culture of the church that where you're going to be starting isn't open, isn't ready, it'll just cause more harm, right?
Yeah.
It'll just dissolve over time, right? It won't be correct. Now, there's always going to be friction, right? Because making space for new people brings discomfort.
Yeah.
No matter what, right? Especially people who are different from you, people who think different, speak different language, eat different food, like those kinds of things, right? That's automatically going to build some discomfort in, right? But if the church has the right mentality, has the right heart and spirit about it, right, and is willing to enter into this kind of difficult process of becoming different and one with somebody else or with another group, then we have something, right? But if we're not, and it's also economic, right? A lot of times we're looking at Hispanic ministries to be the answer of bringing in more money, right? Like we put them, and we also put them in buildings that are,
Crappy.
They're terrible, right? And so they're spending most of their entrepreneurial energy in trying to repair a building, trying to get it ready, right? Trying to make sure that it,
retrofitted,
it works, as opposed to actually going out and doing ministry, right?
Yeah.
And so my goal is to start preparing, right? Both lay leadership and new clergy and making spaces for that, and then start taking congregations who have this calling, right, to say, hey, like, we really want to explore. We want to know what's the possibilities here, because we see around us, right, and we want to reach this group.
We talked earlier about lack of connection. I think we need a better connection in Houston. I think you need to be involved in it. We need to have all the churches involved in having these conversations, not just here, like in this, but this exact conversation to begin to brainstorm together how we can grow the kingdom of God.
Yes.
Like you said, one of the things I learned years ago, and I don't want to wind this down, be faithful to your time too, because Cesar is also on conference staff, so he's got to go to all these meetings and show up at all this stuff, and he's got to be face. You have to actually attend everything.
I know, I can't sneak out anymore.
See, that's what happens when you work for the conference. But I do want to be faithful. But I do remember, and I told this story Sunday about living in community is kind of hard. It's frustrating. Some people think, some Anglo-white folks think that Hispanic community is all like a homogeneous, like what white people are homogeneous, right, or whatever, which we're not. I mean, nowadays, socioeconomic and politics. Hispanic people are not, they share language, right? But I told the stories years ago. I remember at Esperanza on Christmas Eve, or they would make tamales, right? Because the big tradition in the Hispanic community is Christmas is about tamales. So they thought we'd get everybody together, right? We'd have, because they want to be together, and they would share time, and we're going to make tamales together. And each person would bring their own fillings from there, whether it's Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Mexico, wherever you came from, you bring the fillings. Well, they got in there and they started to make the masa, which you think is just like, that's just the masa. That's just that's like the
and
wrapper.
The church divided 8 ways.
Yeah, no, that's just
idea
the
was
wrapper. The diversity is going to come with the fillings, and the whole thing shut down because they could not agree on
how to make the masa.
Which country, which region made masa the right way. So
It's the Guatemalans.
they kind of had a
chuchitos, man, or tamales, right? Like, you don't know which. Yeah, you got to be careful.
But it was funny. So then in the future years, they went and had all the masa made ahead of time and brought it in and said, all right, we'll fight over the filling, but we're not going to fight over the masa. But I mean, that's kind of the reality I think some people don't realize, is that you could have people like on Sunday morning at Generaciones are from all over Central South America and all over the U.S. that are second or third generation Hispanic Latino families.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the beauty of it, I think. Honestly, it's the immigrant experience for the Hispanic people here is very multi. I mean, a Hispanic church automatically is multilingual in many ways, right? Because I had members who spoke English from San Martin, Colombia, Creole Inglés, Inglés Criollo, right? And Spanish as well, right? And so you have a community that's has a shared language, but not all the words mean the same either,
Yes.
right? And so you have this group of people that are automatically having to be open to having to be diverse. And that's the beauty of it, right? Because for us, call us Anglo Church, right? It's just about understanding how we can open up to more diversity. Because they're already living in a diverse world, right? They're living in a diverse world. Their world here automatically is different. And they're open to being a part of other communities. They're also willing to be open with them,
Yeah.
right?
Great.
And so it's not climbing a mountain. I think a pastor said it's crossing the street, right? And we just need to learn how to do that.
Immigrant communities have to learn to assimilate in ways that people who are born and raised here, we don't ever have to even really think about. And what you're finding now is then as people are assimilating into your culture and it becomes more diverse, then you who have always kind of known and controlled, now you feel threatened, like changing too much. And that's what we see kind of in the cultural streams of politics and everything else is people feel threatened by that diversity, which we shouldn't be, but it goes back to control. Well, I want to be faithful, let you get out of here. Cesar, thank you so much for
thanks
coming
for
and
having
being
me,
with us
Cesar.
on the podcast. We kind of make sure you like, subscribe, share with a friend. This is a great conversation that I'm looking forward to us continuing.
Yes.
Yeah, it would be
In
great. I'd
different
love to.
contexts,
Yes.
especially here in Houston and in our Texas conference. I think that it's very needed and
Huge.
way past time. And I think we're turning the corner to where now we can start looking, like Melissa said, with clarity, with hope, with joy, and actually instead of just kind of holding and playing defense for the last few years or just kind of trying to hold it together. Now it's time to kind of turn the attention outward, I think.
Absolutely.
Is really good.
Yeah.
Well, we sign off by just saying our names as we close out. I'm John Stevens,
Cesar Martinez.
I'm Matt Russell.
and this is Pod Have Mercy.